Ever since I got bit by that spider, I've only had 1 week where my life has felt normal. That was when you found out.
When you botched that spell where you wanted everyone to forget the Peter Parker Spider-Man, we started getting some visitors. From every universe.
Hello, Peter. You're not Peter Parker.
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Dr. Otto Octavius.
Wait, no, seriously, what's your actual name?
There are others out there. We need to send them back. So, Scooby-Doo this crap.
You know, all this is kind of your mess. I know a couple of magic words myself, starting with the word please.
Please, Scooby-Doo this crap.
You're flying out into the darkness to fight ghosts.
What do you mean?
They all die fighting Spider-Man. It's their fate. I'm sorry, kid.
Yeah, me too.
Don't.
Look, there has to be another way!
There isn't. They're a danger to our universe.
You're not gonna take this away from me. Peter.
You're struggling to have everything you want while the world tries to make you choose.
This is all my fault. I can't save everyone. What's happening?
They're starting to come through, and I can't stop them.
December 17th, exclusively in movie theaters.
Hello and welcome to our holiday special edition of Observation Conversations and Observations with Friends. Today is a very special day for lots of reasons, but first and foremost, as you've seen by the title and the thumbnail, today we are finally getting to close out the year with Spider-Man No Way Home, a movie that has been massively hyped by everyone and very much including ourselves. And well, yeah, the anticipation for this has been off the charts, and my goodness, was it something special. My name is Jonathan Goodisonora, and I'm joined as always by my intrepid co-host, Reid Chrisman. How you doing, Reid?
I'm doing well. And shall I introduce our other guest today, my wonderful partner, Jess, who saw the movie with me and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes, I did.
I hope she enjoyed it. She said
I
she
did enjoy it.
Okay, cool.
Thank you guys for having me again. I loved
Thank
being
you
here
for being
last time.
Absolutely. I know you were, it's, we really bring you back for the top shelf episodes, because last time you were here for Shang-Chi, and that was fantastic, and now Spider-Man, so... I think that's good company to keep in terms of being a guest. So guys, as usual, we're going to try to do a short non-spoiler section, and then we're going to follow up with a full spoiler-filled review afterwards. And then a quick recap of where we were right, where we were wrong in terms of our many predictions going into this movie. A lot to sift through there. But let's kick off with just a simple question. What did you guys think about, in non-spoiler terms, Spider-Man No Way Home? Did it live up to just the unbelievable hype?
So, low-key, going into this movie, I didn't have too much of an expectation. I was just like, oh, it's a Spider-Man movie. I'm really excited because I love the Spider-Man movies. And there was a bunch of rumors already circulating around it, like since it was announced, and I didn't really pay attention to them. I was like, whatever. I don't want to like get myself expected for anything in case that it doesn't happen, or like if there's a rumor that I really want it to be true. Like whatever. I'm gonna ignore it, right? So going into the movie, I didn't have like a true, like, you know.
Well, you also had part of the movie spoiled for you, didn't you?
Oh my God, no, I did. So it was really bad too. It was like scrolling on TikTok, like as one does, and I opened the comments on a video because the video was funny, and this spoiled it, like the whole movie.
Oh man.
And I was like, no way. And he said it in really quick sentences too, like very matter of fact sentences. And I was like, oh, there's no way. So then I had to Google it if it was true because the movie was already dropped for a day. And it ended up being true, but I didn't want to tell Reid that it got spoiled for me, but I had to.
She said that the movie had gotten spoiled, and then I immediately just went la 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 la. I just completely
instinctually protecting yourself.
Yes, it was fight or flight for sure.
Before that, I didn't have an expectation, but now after that whole spoiler thing, I expected things to happen. But it did exceed the expectations. I didn't expect. I'm gonna say this without spoilers. I'm gonna shut up. I don't know how to say it without spoilers.
It's tough.
So,
it is tough.
It exceeded expectations. Is the conclusion? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to say that this was by far my favorite of the 3.5 Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. Yeah, it was really cool. It took some things in a direction I didn't quite expect. Really heartfelt. I think the best action out of all the Spider-Man movies that we've seen. Yeah, I was amazed. I was blown away. I had to see it twice because it was just that good. Yeah, it might be my movie of the year.
Yeah, so, and again, I just have to, speak in the broadest possible generalities here. What I've been telling everyone who will listen, and many people who are not willing to listen, ever since I got out of this movie, it's been that, I've been a huge fan of Spider-Man and the Spider-Man films ever since I was a kid. Like, literally, I remember watching Spider-Man 2 for the first time this must have been 2007, 2008-ish, when it was already out on home video. And just being so blown away by not just the action, but the fact that a superhero movie, a comic book movie, could have this kind of resonant emotional stakes. And as a kid, I could appreciate that. You only appreciate it more as you get older. But just being so blown away by it and watching every Spider-Man movie in theaters since, I just, I've always been such a big fan of this character. And this movie was a movie I never thought we would get to see on the big screen in live action. I just, of course we had Into the Spider-Verse, which was exceptional. One of the best animated films, perhaps the best animated film of the last decade. But in live action, with these kinds of stakes and with all of the various connections to previous Spider-Man films, not just in the home trilogy, but also before that, bring back all these different villains from across the previous iterations of Spider-Man. I just never thought we would see something like this on the big screen, and it just, I mean, not to wax too poetic here, but it just, it makes your heart just soar when you're watching it on the big screen. It's like, dreams that I never even knew I had coming true. Wish fulfillment and wish fulfillment, and let's call it what it is, fan service, but done as well as I can remember it ever having been done. And it's all in the service of a really good, solid, compelling story. Just, it's such a pleasure to have all these old villains returning. Of course, Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin, outstanding. It's so great to have him back. Alfred Molina, Dr. Octopus, tremendous. Also, getting a chance to revisit some less beloved villains from the previous films, like Electro, and kind of giving them a second chance to be cooler and succeeding. Like, that was awesome. So,
like, Jamie Foxx is just awesome.
Yeah, like he's
cool, and I'm glad they were just like, okay, be Jamie Foxx in this one.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, yeah, he has so much charisma as an actor and as a person. They just leaned into it in this one instead of fighting against it in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I thought was tremendous. Also, Sandman, giving him a little bit of extra depth. Admittedly, the Lizard wasn't greatly changed from The Amazing Spider-Man, but it was still nice to see him there. So, yeah, just tremendous. I think it is as fitting an end as you could ever conjure for the home trilogy of MCU Spider-Man films. And I think the biggest takeaway for the Spider-Man character that I had from this movie is that this is the first movie of Tom Holland's tenure where I felt like this isn't Spider Lad, this isn't Spider Teen, this isn't just, a Spider-themed member of the Avengers. This is Spider-Man.
Yeah, this isn't like Iron Man Jr. This is
exactly and I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I think he's done a tremendous job, but even me, it kind of bugged me how, like, in Endgame, for instance, he's just come back from being blipped, and he's participated in this huge climactic battle, and the first thing he does is he rushes over to Mr. Stark. Mr. Stark, there was this alien, we were on an alien planet, we were doing all this and that, and it's like, hold on, take a breath, this kid has been through so much. I don't want to see him still acting like he's a kid, like a 15-year-old, and in this movie, they put Spider-Man through the ringer. Like, he goes through a lot, and he feels more grown up, and he feels like a Peter Parker that really has, for the first time, grown up with these movies and with these appearances. And I loved that. It's forcing Tom Holland's Peter to reckon with the consequences of being Spider-Man, more so than I would argue, both being Peter Parker and being Spider-Man, than in any of his previous appearances. And I just loved that. So this movie was lightning in a bottle. I mean, it really feels like this movie came about. They were looking at the field of what they could possibly do with the third movie in the Homecoming trilogy. And everything just aligned in such a way where we can get this person and that person, this person together at just this time to make this movie. And it all just came together, and it's like, how could we not do this with the opportunity that was here? And thank goodness they did. So it was more ambitious than any of the previous Tom Holland films. It was it was more ambitious. It was more impressive. It was more just I don't know. It was just felt more like the classic Spider-Man that we loved about Tobey and Andrew, now with Tom Holland. And as you could tell, this is going to be a 2-hour video of just us just gushing about it. But I mean, I loved this movie. I really did. And actually, I'll tell you what, since I know we're all chomping at the bit to get to spoilers, let's just give our scores right now, and I'll kick us off. For me, this movie was a 10 out of 10 with a badass seal of approval. I loved it. It was tremendous. A perfect way to cap off this year in movies. Like I said, it was wish fulfillment, but everything was in the service of a really great story. It felt like this Peter Parker really was Spider-Man for the first time in the Homecoming trilogy. And the rumor is, and the idea is, there is going to be a new Tom Holland trilogy after this. They're going to take a little break from it, and then they'll come back. I'm very excited to see where they go from here, because, in many ways, yeah, and
Six.
and in many ways, in many ways, the noteworthy thing about Homecoming was the total lack of a Peter Parker or Spider-Man origin story. But really, when you go back and look at these three movies, it's not that Tom Holland hasn't had a Spider-Man origin story. It's that these three movies represent the longest Spider-Man origin story we've ever gotten. And it's brilliant. So love it. Highly recommend it. It's a really special thing when you go into a movie with such high expectations and it still manages to exceed them. So bravo, Spider-Man No Way Home.
All right, so you gave it a 10 out of 10 as your
with
score.
a badass seal of approval.
With badass seal of approval. I'll put it this way. When I see a movie in theaters, I'll think about it for the rest of the day. I'll think about it before going to bed or while I'm like lying in bed falling asleep. Very rarely am I continuously thinking about a movie like days after I've seen it and just constantly like reliving specific scenes in my head continuously and just like picking out every detail of that scene from memory.
It's true,
and that
he
is
doesn't.
yeah, and that's what yeah, I mean, you keep asking me like, oh, what are you thinking about? And I'm just like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
no.
that scene from that movie.
I think we were like out doing errands and he was so quiet. And I really went, is something wrong? Like, what happened? He's like, no, sorry. I was just thinking about like that from the movie last night. And I went, oh my God, okay. And like, even before we went to bed, we had like a mini discussion. We're like, I don't know what to say, but like, oh, this happened. I can't believe that happened. And then we wake up, we're like, can you believe that happened? Like, it was just like a continuous.
Yeah, it's like rarely does that happen, but this was one of those movies where it's like a little brain worm.
I'm sorry. That's just such a funny mental image. You know, the two of you will just like going in a grocery store, and you're in aisle 4, but Reid is in Act 2, Scene 4.
Yeah,
you know, just reliving that. You know, that's just, you know, he's just off in his own world at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been kind of a head in the clouds guy, but man, if that movie did not make me just, I don't know, basically what I'm trying to say. It was really good. I kept trying to replay it in my head over and over because it was just so special. So that's got to be a 10 out of 10 for me as well, which I don't think surprises anybody. But
yeah, I also agree. 10 out of 10. It's a nice culmination of a movie, right? Because from all the other Spider-Man films, we see him as like a kid. He's always like never taken seriously ever, and even in the I don't know if we can. I don't know what to say because it's a little bit, but in the beginning, you know, like they're still treating him like a kid. They're like, broad spectrum, you can't do that kind of thing, right? But towards the end, you really see this like emotional grip. I mean, we've seen Tom Holland be emotional before, but there's like this really big emotion towards I don't know what to say because I'm really.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right.
Like there's this emotional like towards the end, and you just really feel it, and it's a nice character development of the Spider-Man, which I've been waiting to see for a long time with all of his movies before. Like you just really see him as a kid, but now all of a sudden he's like a man, you know? So
yeah, I feel like Tom Holland's acting ability has really grown since he started, but like in playing Spider-Man, just his performance in this one was better than all the previous ones.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, it really is like the first time where you felt like he's really grown up with this role from 2016 to now, and it's great to see. And so, because really, when you think about it, he has been in a Spider-Man. He's appeared as Spider-Man almost every single one of those years in that 5-year span of time, from Civil War to Homecoming to Infinity War, Endgame. Of course, 2020 was taken off because there were no movies in 2020, and now coming back this year. So it was just tremendous. And you know, I was thinking about it. You know, we have about a almost 50-50 split, I would say, on observation conversations about reviewing movies versus TV. And I was going back and I was looking at it, and I think of all the movies we've reviewed this year, I don't think I've yet given one a 10 out of 10. And so,
really?
Yeah, I think that this is my favorite. Well, by default, it is my favorite movie I've seen this year. You know, and this year had some movies I really enjoyed, like Shang-Chi comes to mind immediately. Like that was, you know, that was a really, really fun time at the theater. But yeah, I think this is, for me, the movie of 2021, you know, and we're going to do our observation conversation awards at a later date where we really just go into everything and pick out our favorite stuff from 2021. But I think just by default, I have to pick this movie as my favorite of the year.
All right, can we please get into spoilers? Because we're all like,
yeah, we're all
like,
sitting on pins and needles.
yeah.
We're all sitting on pins and needles. So, all right, you have been warned. We are now shifting
go
into
watch the movie.
Yeah.
Watch it in theaters. I will say, you don't need to see it in 3D. I saw it without 3D and with 3D. The 3D didn't add that much, but
You saw it with 3D?
yeah, when I saw it with my family, it was in 3D. It didn't really add that much.
Yeah. I feel like I don't feel like there's really been a movie since like Avatar in 2009 that's really tried to maximize 3D.
Yeah, because
Right.
they don't like try to make specific scenes that like reach out anymore. All they do is the very simple like, oh, we like shift these pixels this way and these pixels this way,
Right.
and the glasses will fix it. But like,
yeah, which is very basic. Yeah,
it doesn't actually add that much. Yeah,
Yeah.
but go see this movie right now.
Yes, we should.
It is fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'll say that nowadays, really the emphasis is more on the premium exhibition formats like Dolby and IMAX and all of those XD. And I saw this movie in the Dolby Atmos theater. Couldn't recommend it highly enough. I mean, just, to your point, this demands to be seen on the biggest screen possible. Like, you'll still have a great time with it watching it on your TV at home, but if by some incredible turn of events you haven't yet already seen this movie in theaters, go see it in theaters. And thank us later because this movie has to be seen on the big screen. It just I mean, this has been a very kind of rough and tumble year for movie going. Theaters. They've had some big hits, but it's been still very lean compared to the pre-pandemic. But this movie, my God, has been just such a ray of light. I think it has already crossed $1 billion, and that's without China. So it has not even showing in China yet, and it's already crossed $1 billion worldwide.
It's funny you say that. That was actually, I went back and watched previous episodes just to see like, oh, what would our predictions, what were kind of we talking about, and one of the things we brought up was I was asking, is this movie going to cross $1 billion? Because we weren't sure, and we thought that would have to include China. Because there was a Chinese movie that got to like 800 million, and that was like the top international box office of the year. But yeah,
crossed it in a week. Crossed it in 1 week
without China, which is
which is just insane. So
I think this is the movie that has really revived theaters. I don't think it could have done it alone without all the movies that came before it, but I've not buying movie tickets throughout the pandemic. This was like the one time where like most theaters were nearly fully booked for like most time slots. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Because usually, I mean, throughout the year, like, a big movie like, The Eternals came out, and like I was able to get decent seats, in a really nice theater a couple days in advance, like not even any crazy thing, and this one, like even the crap seats were sold out weeks in advance. Like you could not just like sneak into an opening weekend showing no matter what you did. So yeah,
in order to get good seats, we had to see it at 10:20 p.m.
Yes,
we got out of the theater at 1:30.
Oh man, so yeah, go see it, and we're gonna go talk about it now. So full spoilers, you have been warned. We are now shifting into our spoiler review. So guys, now that we're in the spoiler inclusive cone.
I can't believe Spider-Man dies at the end of this movie. Who would have thought?
It's I thought that was a bold choice. They're killing him off. They're going in a whole new direction. But I thought it was good. He actually got dusted again. Just him though. But now that we are in the spoiler zone, where should we start? I mean,
I reckon at the beginning.
Well, let's start at the beginning. I think that's a good idea. Reid, you always have good ideas. Like, we should start at the beginning. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's a precious thing to possess. So, all right, let's start off at the beginning. J. Jonah Jameson of the Daily Bugle has exposed Peter Parker's identity as Spider-Man to the world. So, of course, this is the very final scene of Far From Home, now being revisited to pick up this movie. While simultaneously framing him as the individual responsible for Mysterio's death and an alleged mass casualty event in London, also the events of Far From Home. Numerous civilians nearby begin to surround him and Michelle Jones Watson, MJ, forcing them to flee from the media and the police. They hide in Parker's apartment and reunite with May Parker and Happy Hogan. Which, that was quite a thrilling start when they're escaping through the city.
I want to say when they were like on top of the bridge, that whole conversation where like Ned calls him and it's just dude. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievably dangerous for Peter to take MJ on the route that they went through, including at one point going through the subways. But
yeah.
But I mean, he's Spider-Man, so I guess he gets away with it. Not long after, the Department of Damage Control, who we previously saw in Homecoming, take them along with Ned Leeds in custody in their custody for interrogation. All right, so I'm sorry, Reid. I was gonna try to limit the smug face, but I can't. The smug face is gonna come out because, of course, in our second trailer reaction, you emphatically said there is no way that Matt Murdock is going to show up in this. It's just not going to happen. And I said, Reid, no, don't. Please keep an open mind. I said, the door is open. And you scoffed. You said, ha, there's no way. There's no way. I said, the door is open. Well, guess what? Matt Murdock is in this movie. Charlie, and not just any Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox, back from the Netflix series. He is here. So the Parkers hire Mr. Murdock to, give them some advice on how to deal with the Department
of Counsel.
Control. Yeah. He, being the remarkable lawyer that he is, manages to get the criminal charges dropped. However, as Parker, Jones, and Leeds return to Midtown School of Science and Technology for their senior year, the intense controversy causes them to be rejected from every college they apply to, including their number one school, MIT. So, this is a bit of a conundrum, now that the whole world knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. It's not only ruined his life, but it's also beginning to ruin his friends' lives. So, he thinks, well, shit, what do I do now? If only there were any wizards that I knew that might be able to help me out, maybe just do a little tweaking of the fabric of reality to just make everybody forget, make this whole shit show go away. So, fortunately, Peter Parker does know one wizard. He visits the New York Sanctum and asks Dr. Strange to make the identity of Spider-Man a secret once more. Despite being warned by Wong not to, Strange attempts to cast the spell. However, Parker incessantly requests various individuals close to him be exempt from its effects. As a result, the spell becomes unstable, forcing Strange to contain it. For not consulting with college administrators before meeting with him, Strange furiously kicks Parker out of the Sanctum because Strange realizes, wait, you didn't just try to call MIT to speak to one of their admissions people to explain the situation before you came to me asking me to alter the fabric of reality?
I mean, to be fair, I don't think anyone has ever expected that was something you could do. Like, if you receive a rejection letter and you can just call the university and be like,
yeah, but this is a pretty extraordinary case.
I get that this is different, but this makes me feel like I could have gotten into some of those colleges I applied to out of high school.
Yeah, I mean, you will at least grant that is a less radical intervention than asking a wizard to alter the fabric of reality.
Yeah, brainwash the world. Yeah.
So, at least try to exhaust all options before you go the Doctor Strange route. Strange is not having it, so he kicks Peter out. So Peter, searching for options, contacts Flash Thompson, who was admitted to MIT. And Flash Thompson able to put Peter on to the fact that an administrator is currently heading for the airport after a mixer with all the admitted students. And he catches up with her on the Alexander Hamilton Bridge in an attempt to appeal his, Jones, and Leeds applications. Parker is suddenly ambushed by Otto Octavius, who seems to know him personally. Octavius grabs him and rips out a piece of the Iron Spider armor, transferring its nanites onto his tentacles. He goes for another strike, but Parker reveals his face, which is unfamiliar to him. That's curious. Parker... Oh, all right. Lost my place. Oh yeah, Parker then takes control of Octavius' tentacles with the suit's nanites and rescues the MIT admin from falling off the bridge, who decides to help get him and his friends admitted out of gratitude for saving her life. All right, so the Green Goblin arrives and attempts to attack Parker, but he and Octavius are transported into the Sanctum, where Strange imprisons Octavius and the Lizard. He caught the Lizard previously. He informs Peter that Octavius, Lizard, and Green Goblin are not of this universe, but from parallel realities within the multiverse, who were pulled into this reality by the failed spell since they know Spider-Man's identity. To contain the spell, Strange locks it in the Machina de Cadavus, a mystical containment unit. All right, so I feel like that's about the end of Act 1. Yeah, that's about the end of Act 1. So,
yep.
What do you guys think? We're off to the races.
I want to go back to the beginning where Peter gets like back into the apartment, and finds out that like Happy and May are breaking up, and him being like such a kid, like immediately refocuses on like trying to help them with their relationship, and he kind of forgets that he's like being hunted down, which I thought was really cute. And he's like trying to get all the windows closed, and it's all really frantic. And this was actually a really great long take that John Watts did.
Yeah, I think that, so there's a few things about this first act. First of all, at least for me, this felt like the most kind of the most traditional of the home trilogy. Like this felt very much like a Homecoming type opening. It was very much Peter dealing with his place in the MCU, obviously dealing with being outed by the Daily Bugle. High school stuff, worrying about getting into college, hanging out with MJ. It all felt very familiar. So, for me, I feel like this movie was almost like 3 movies in one. The first part is kind of the most Homecoming-esque part. The second part, as we'll get into, feels like almost more of like a Men in Black type film, which I really liked. And then the third part is, well, we're in spoilers, so I'll just say it's like Spider-Man Endgame, essentially.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it is. So let's talk about this before we move on to Act 2. Just because, again, I'm sorry, but the smug face is fully on now. What did you guys think about Charlie Cox coming back as Matt Murdock? Pretty cool, right?
Very. I remember sitting in the theater and I was like, that dude looks familiar. And I can't understand why. And everyone was clapping. I'm very slow when it comes to like other movie references. Like, I watched the Spider-Man movies growing up, obviously, but I don't remember much of it because I was very young. I tried to rewatch them, but it never really went through. But Reid was like, he was like, yeah, like he was like shaking like his hands at me.
Yeah,
I went, okay.
Sorry, continue.
I went like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And then I realized everyone was clapping. I was like, oh my God, that's the dude. And then Reid was just ecstatic. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was gonna say you're giving me the smoke face. I know I was strong in my convictions that neither Charlie Cox nor Daredevil, the character, would appear in this movie. But when he did show up, I was very happy. So fuck you for trying to make me feel like shit for being wrong. I was still so excited that he showed up, and I was like, holy shit, this is really cool.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I was about to ask you, Jess, was he shaking in happiness or rage, or both?
I think it's both.
Son of a bitch.
I think it's both. Like, he was like, oh my God, it's him, and he was like, oh my god, it's him. Like almost like he couldn't believe like that was him in the screen.
Listen. I had a lot of fears about this movie before going into it, that it was going to be too convoluted, too complex. There were going to be too many moving pieces. The fact that, you know, he was delegated to just a very simple cameo, and it was pulled off very well and very naturally. Did a lot. And I was impressed with how they pulled it off, and I was really happy to see him on screen.
Yeah, you know, there were several audible clapping and cheering moments throughout the runtime of this movie, and this was the first one. This was the Matt Marmorbeck reveal was the first one. And even though I predicted it, I was very surprised to actually see them go through with it. And but yeah, it's awesome to see him. And you know, not to, you know, this is spoilers for No Way Home, not Hawkeye on Disney Plus, but it also does tie into some reveals we've gotten on Hawkeye. So it's kind of neat to have those two things kind of happening in tandem. Also, what else? Let's see.
I just want to say, you know, the moment where he catches the brick.
Oh yeah.
Peter's like, how did he do that? And he's like, I'm a very good lawyer. Like, that was just so good.
Yeah, you know, it's too bad we didn't get to see more of the teachers from Homecoming and Far From Home.
Yeah.
You know, we saw them just very briefly in that one scene. We don't really see them again. I forget their names, but one of them is Martin Starr from Silicon Valley. And
then, we got Hannibal Buress back.
And Hannibal Buress back.
He was the gym teacher. He was like pro Mysterio.
Yeah. All three really funny. Had some really cool moments in Far From Home. Didn't see much of him here, which is too bad. Yeah. Department of Damage Control. I thought maybe we might get another reference to the Vulture. Didn't get anything like that. Oh, also, the reason why it was snowing in the Sanctum. We both had a few theories on why that was. None of them ended up being accurate. The real reason is because some sort of portal had been left open to Siberia, and a winter storm had blown in.
Yeah, if you remember in the Doctor Strange movie, they had those like big doors to like different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And there was like a fight scene, and Doctor Strange like pushed some guy into the desert and then closed the door. But I guess one of those leads to Siberia, and Wong mentioned about or Doctor Strange mentioned a kind of upkeep protection spell not being cast.
Yeah.
But the big thing we find out is that Wong is now technically Sorcerer Supreme.
Right. Yes.
It didn't really say much. It was just like, oh, he won a bet, and now he's Sorcerer Supreme.
No, it wasn't even one of bet. It was because Doctor Strange was blipped for 5 years.
And also
not,
what?
Was it not that they had a conversation about it, and then he's like, oh yeah, technically, or was it about that he blipped?
No, yeah, he got it on a technicality because Doctor Strange blipped for 5 years. So Wong then became Sorcerer Supreme.
See, this movie, there's so much that happens in this movie that I cannot keep up with a tiny thing. So as we're going through it, I'm like, oh yeah, that happened, huh?
and also just to add this adds an extra layer of intrigue to the line we get in WandaVision, that Scarlet Witch is destined to be even more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme. So if Doctor Strange isn't even the Sorcerer Supreme anymore, then he might have a real problem if he's going up against the Scarlet Witch in Multiverse of Madness. So
yeah, well, I think that's meant to be because that book is ancient, right?
Right.
So it's just the general the Sorcerer Supreme is just the most powerful wizard in all of Carmitage or whatever.
Wizarddom.
Yeah, I don't think it's specifically Stephen Strange or Wong. I am interested in knowing how that dynamic is going to change in Multiverse of Madness, which we saw a little bit of Wong in, but he doesn't seem to be on the journey with Strange.
Yeah.
And just I don't know what the semantics are over that title, and whether it's has to do with the power thing, or whether the title is just kind of bestowed, or
yeah, no, it's an interesting question, but Yeah, also just to state this, I mean, when we first get to see Dr. Octopus again in the battle on the bridge, even though we had already seen a fair bit of it from the trailers, I mean, still, I mean, it's just the impact of what you're seeing really does hit you because you're like, this, you know, again, it's one of those moments where you're like, this is really happening. We're actually bringing all the old villains back and we're revisiting all of these beloved characters. And it was just awesome to see him again. You know, Alfred Molina. I mean, so many of these Spider-Man villains are perfectly cast, and he's a perfect example of them. So, of someone who's perfectly cast. So, really cool battle.
Speaking of Doc Ock and that bridge battle, one of the things that we talked about in one of the previous episodes was I made a joke saying, wouldn't it be funny if there was a fight scene where all 4 of Peter's like spider limbs were attacking all 4 of Doc Ock's like octopus limbs, and then they were throwing fisticuffs at each other, and like every limb was in use, and that happened.
Yeah,
that happened, and you know, you thought you said, oh, if that happens, it's gonna be like very cartoonish. They need to like lean away from that, but that would be really funny. But it was just really cool, and they did it, and that's one of the things I loved about this movie was that the fight choreography was very smart. Is very smart and well thought out.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk more about that in Act 2, but.
Yeah, but I have to hand it to you. That is 1 point for you because you did call that. I said no, they're not going to go all the way.
That's the thing. It was not a prediction. It was a joke. I was like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if they did this?
Yeah, but I'll still give you credit. And also, of course, we get a little glimpse of the Goblin, but of course, we don't see him in full force until later on. So let's go on to Act 2 then, unless anyone else has anything to say about events we've already covered. All right, moving along. So, Parker is recruited, well, more like told, by Strange, that it's his responsibility to go and find and capture these visitors. And so he receives a magic-based upgrade to his suit. Basically, it's this little thing that's like a little wrist-mounted magic launcher thing that will automatically send whatever it comes in contact with back to the Sanctum. So, with assistance...
Another thing that we predicted also.
Oh, did you predict that?
We both predicted that. I think technically that was yours, and I agreed with you.
Oh, I don't even remember.
Yeah.
About a magic launcher.
Yeah, because we were like, oh, what is that device on his wrist? What's with like the glowing things? And I was like, maybe it's a protection spell. And then you're like, well, maybe it's like a magic web because Doctor Strange has that like, glowing whip thing.
Yes.
And you were right.
Yeah, so but I think since that was both kind of, we were talking about that mutually, we'll both get credit for that. So, with assistance from MJ and Ned, Parker locates Max Dillon as he materializes his body out of electricity. Startled, he attacks Parker and gains the upper hand, but Flint Marko, Sandman, intervenes to shield the boy. The two work together to cut the power lines, which fully restores Dillon's body. So this is what I was talking about with more of like the Men in Black stuff. I know I really liked this part when he was literally swinging out into the night to go capture these multiversal baddies. It's the total unknown. Like, you know, he's never met these people before. He doesn't know who they are, doesn't know what they're about. Of course we do because we've seen the previous movies, but for Tom Holland's Peter, he has no idea what he's getting himself into. And it's a really cool sequence. So, when he is sent to the Sanctum, Marko believes Parker killed him, but is also captured before he can retaliate. Elsewhere, Norman Osborn attempts to escape from the Green Goblin, breaking his mask before fleeing to a feast facility, seeking refuge. That's the homeless shelter where Aunt May and him were both fundraising for in Far From Home. Parker locates Osborn thanks to May and brings him to the Sanctum as well. So, this is not the Goblin. This is Norman Osborn, who's seemingly trying to get away from the Goblin persona for good. He smashes the helmet and everything. But really, as we see, in smashing the helmet, all he's done is just taken the externalized influence of the Goblin persona, and now he's internalized it. So he's just dormant for a little while. But he does come back to the Sanctum willingly, thinking that Parker is going to help him, which he does intend to do, but doesn't know how yet. Osborn, Octavius, and Dylan soon realizes that they were spared from death by being brought into this universe moments before they were thought to have perished. Strange explains to Parker that these three are all doomed to die fighting their own Spider-Man. He intends to use the Machina to reverse the spell and send them back to their fates for the sake of the greater multiverse. So this was another, it's kind of pointless to say this was a standout moment in the movie because the whole movie was made up of standout moments. But just the banter between the villains in the Sanctum as they're all commiserating over their own experiences with Spider-Man. And perhaps the best part was when they were reflecting on their perspectives of the other villains' kind of encounters and events, like when Dylan was talking about how he knew what's his name? The professor.
Dr. Connors?
Yeah, Dr. Connors, from the events of Amazing Spider-Man when how he turned himself, attempting to heal himself, he turned himself into a lizard. And then his big plan was to
turn
the rest of the city also into lizards. And it's like, shit, well, it does sound stupid when you put it that way.
I love the exchange too, where it's like, Max was like, yeah, I fell into a vat of electric eels. And Flint Marco was like, yeah, I fell into a super collider. And it's like, damn, you got to be careful where you fall.
Yeah, you got to be careful. Yeah, because it's fascinating to get all of their perspectives from the events of the villains that went before them. Octavius talking about how Osborn had died years prior fighting Spider-Man and how he turned himself into a monster. And then Marco talking about how Octavius died drowning himself and his fusion reaction machine. It was just fantastic. Just the banter between all of them, commiserating over their own experiences and their perspectives on the others' experiences. Really, really love that. Pure fan service, but it's just done so sublimely that you don't mind.
Plus the tree monster.
No, yeah. So, convinced that they could be cured of their antagonistic natures and be spared from death, Parker steals the Machina before Strange can use it and flees. So, Strange gives chase, takes Peter's magic back, and sends him into the mirror dimension to retrieve the Machina, while also trying to implore him of the multiversal stakes, relying on the visitors being sent back. Unfazed, Parker entangles Strange in a web matrix and steals his sling ring before returning to the earthly plane. He passes the ring to Leeds and the Machina to Jones and releases the prisoners from confinement. I think there's a lot to say about this confrontation between Peter and Strange, but we'll circle back to it after this next bit. Or actually, maybe we should talk about it now because we're going on to another big scene in its own right. So this was really cool.
I love this scene. I absolutely loved when Dr. Strange opened up the mirror dimension, and then Peter was like, "I know math. It's just. I guess he said geometry or something." And he found a way to break through it and like get the sling ring and everything. I just thought it was a really good scene. It was like that whole, and you could see like he is kind of like saying like, "Oh yeah, maybe I should just press the button and like give it back," but he's very adamant like, "No, we can fix this. We can make it better." And that's very much what Peter's character is that he always sees the good in everything, even though sometimes the good is more likely outweighed than the bad, or the bad outweighs the whatever. You know what I mean? You definitely know what I'm talking about. But the whole scene, it's like a confrontation. Like it's very much like a childlike perspective against an adult perspective. I saw in that part. Where Strange is like, you need to send these people back because it's gonna mess up the whole time. And he's like, no, we can save them. We can absolutely save them. Like we have to save them. It's very much like a idealistic, like he can really save what these villains are going through. I love that scene actually. It sticks in my brain all the time.
Absolutely, yeah. Just phenomenal. It was like we were all blown away by the magical mystery tour sequence in Far From Home. When Mysterio was using his illusions. This was like that on on mushrooms, more like. It was visually just stunning the way. First of all, just the initial confrontation when Strange uses two sling rings to essentially portal style, get Peter to web himself and bring him back and pushes this astral form out of his body.
Yeah, so when I said like this movie had really smart fight choreography, like this is what I meant, which is, it was a great use of Doctor Strange's powers and how that would perfectly combat Peter.
Yeah.
Where like he flips his own foot, or he has the two portals above each other, and like, Peter is like holding onto his own web and the cape, and it's kind of like going like this. Which I don't know if they like had to consult some physicists about the physics of that.
Yeah.
But it was just really well done.
Oh, absolutely. And when Strange
really
pushes Peter out of his astral form out of his body, I'm not entirely sure how, but he's still kind of able to manipulate his body a little bit.
So so that's actually the spider sense, because I guess the spider sense is more of a physiological thing than a conscious thing. In his astral form, you can actually see little squiggles going around his head, like in the animated, like in Into the Spider-Verse, and his body is just kind of moving on its own, and I think that was just kind of the spider sense kind of activating.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so all of that was fantastic. Watching Peter swim back to his body, that was pretty funny. And then, of course, just the whole sequence in the mirror dimension, just, again, visually stunning. Like, you're just floored watching it because, you don't even have time to think about it. You're just, like, taking it in. First he bends the city in on itself, collapsing in on itself, and then there's two layers of the city. You've got the bottom layer and the top layer, and also they're in the Grand Canyon for some reason.
Yeah, that was a weird choice. I feel like that was just like, okay, this feels empty. We need to fill the empty space with some kind of CG environment.
Right.
And what do we have on file? And then someone's like, well, I have a bunch of rock, like canyon textures.
Yeah. Which, hey, it works. So I'll give them that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then they're fighting on this infinity subway train that becomes a ring of infinity subway trains. And just the way that Peter, figures out how he can use geometry to whip Strange into like this vortex thing, was really neat. So yeah, it's like, it was everything we loved about the Mysterio's Magical Mystery Tour on steroids and mushrooms in this movie. And it was great. So Peter is able to get away from Strange doing that. So he goes back to the Sanctum and he brings the villains who he's now determined to redeem back to Happy's condo, because we should say that the Parkers have been hounded out of their apartment by the media and Department of Damage Control, so they're now staying over at Happy's place. Parker attempts to administer cures for the multiversal refugees. So he starts with Octavius, using a Stark Industries fabricator to engineer a replacement inhibitor chip for his tentacles and restore his higher brain function. In addition, Dylan has a device installed into him which is designed to extract his powers, all of his electricity. But before he could affect Osborn, the Green Goblin takes over his body, who persuades Dylan to remove the neutralizer before it can fully take away his powers. So he steals an arc reactor and, drawing its power, blasts Octavius out of the building. The Lizard, Marco, and Dylan all escape, while the Goblin attacks Parker, sending him to the ground floor. They just keep progressively crashing through the floors of this apartment building. Very much like the Suicide Squad from the summer.
Yeah.
Running outside, May injects an antidote into the Goblin, which does not work. She is struck by his glider. He tosses 2 pumpkin bombs, which Parker fails to block and explodes in their proximity. Parker manages to locate May in the rubble. Unaware that she has been gravely injured, May tells her nephew not to give up helping others despite all odds, lecturing him that with great power comes great responsibility.
With great power, there must also come
great responsibility,
which was the original line in the comics.
Yeah. So I'm glad they could bring that back. And as DODC officers surround them, Parker tries to save May to no avail. Hogan arrives on the scene and is immediately apprehended by the authorities. All right, so I think that is let's call that the end of Act 2, because looking ahead, I think we're getting into the final kind of confrontation. So yeah, we have all of the again, I mean, you have these larger than life characters who all were, leads in their own films, now taking up space in this tiny little condo. It was like, with all that star power, it was almost claustrophobic. But Peter Parker, true to his word, he wants to try to not just send them all back and condemn them to die, but actually try to redeem them and give them a second chance to be better people and not villains in their own stories. And so, first he is able to cure Dr. Octopus, and that was kind of nice. He says that for the first time in as long as he could remember, it's finally quiet. The arms have been in his head for so long that he's forgot what it's like to just be in control. That was nice. Electro is kind of, he was never fully on board with this idea of the cures, but he's like going along with it, because everybody else seems to be. Lizard isn't even there. He's still in the van downstairs. But you can tell that there's a certain point where, again, the spider sense is more apparent now than it has ever been at any point. In any of Tom Holland's previous appearances. I think the only time it's really affected in a major way was in Infinity War, when he was able to kind of feel that he was about to be dusted a few minutes before everyone else. But other than that, it's never really affected in a big way. Not so in this movie. In this movie, they do utilize it quite a lot. And you could tell that Peter Parker, it's almost like he detects a disturbance in the Force, like he can feel that something is up. And it's this really cool shot where he's kind of moving through the condo with all the villains until he's confronted with the Goblin. And, of course, Willem Dafoe, just, my God, what a treasure that man is, Dr. Octopus is saying, once we cure you, it can be just, you could just be yourself again. And the Goblin says, just me, and his trademark Goblin growl. And it's just, that's how you could tell that it's the Goblin is back in control full time now. And yeah, really cool fight scene. Spider-Man fighting the Goblin. And of course, all of this is leading up to, I thought honestly that I thought the way they were going to do it was she would get skewered the way Goblin was skewered in Spider-Man. Didn't quite happen that way. It was more so the bombs that did it. Yeah, I mean, that was a really big twist. I wasn't expecting it. I really wasn't.
Yeah, I cried, I think. I cried a lot during this movie. I'm very emotional when it comes to movies, especially this one. Starting off again from the whole beginning, like that whole Spidey scene, the way it was shot was very beautifully shot. It was a very long shot. Like he's like walking through the apartment, he's like, something's off, and like you could tell in his face. Aunt May could like really tell, like too, like she was like in the background, like grabbing like the thing, like she was like moving on. She had, but wanted to say very cutely, as the villains in her apartment, it was like actually staging the apartment. She had crystals on her head. I thought that was very cute and adorable. She was just like, and you can see it in the scene where like everyone's really still, the smoke from the stage. It's just like coming up very, very slightly. I was like very blown away by that scene. I thought it was very beautiful, even though it was a very tense moment. And the immediate like snap back to when you realize it's the Goblin, and then the whole fight sequence like ends up happening. It's like such an intense scene. It's intense all the way. Like my heart felt like so like wrenched, and like I was like squeezing his hand, like squeezing Reid's hand the whole time. I was like, oh my God. And then she boom dies. Come on. It hurts. And her last words with great power comes the great responsibility, and it's just it hurts.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That scene broke me.
Yeah.
It was so tragic, and just the like Happy pulling up and like, Peter, run, but he doesn't want to like let go of his aunt.
Yeah.
And he's like, wake up. Why are you doing this? Just, wake up. God. Yeah, I think I cried the first time too. It was rough. It was really rough.
Yeah, very emotional, very affecting, very certainly reminiscent of some of the big losses that we've had in the previous films, of the previous Spider-Man iterations, I should say. And yeah, I mean, Marissa Tomei, I think she did a really good job as Aunt May. I think she was a different Aunt May, certainly than we've ever seen before. I think ultimately, now that she's gone, you start to look back and realize, she was probably underutilized for what she could have been, and what she could have done in these movies. She was always kind of relegated to being kind of the, isn't it funny how Aunt May is hot punchline from like Civil War that they just kept doing over and over again. But, Marissa Tomei brought a lot to the role. And, it was, the fact that she was able to kind of end her tenure as that character, dispensing the quintessential Spider-Man wisdom, kind of the words that guide him throughout his whole life, I think was very moving, very touching. In our predictions, I think we made a few predictions as to who might die in the course of this movie. I think I at one point suggested it might be Happy or somebody like that, but I don't think either of us ever for a moment thought it was going to be May who was going to bite it by the end.
Not at all.
So a very, very big surprise. And, this is kind of goes back to what we were saying about, this movie had an emotional weight to it that the previous Homecoming and How Far From Home just didn't really, I mean, they were very fun movies and they were very good movies, but, they weren't as well-rounded as this movie is, certainly.
So that was the part, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's all right. Yeah.
So remember when I said that it got spoiled for me on TikTok? Aunt May died was the first sentence that I read in that thing.
Man.
I said, they're fucking lying. There's no way they can kill her off. Like, you really see Aunt May assume the whole motherly role for Peter. And it's really endearing, even though they use her as a punchline because she's hot and she's a woman. They really, really threw that in there. But you can really see her step into the role of a mom in this movie, where she was picking, taking care of him, fixing his suit, washing it for him. And it's just I really have grown attached to her character. I really love her character.
Oh, yeah.
Even though she's not in it very often, it's nice to know that Peter still had that motherly or parent-y figure, because Tony Stark, as we know, is gone, which was another
alive
figure for him. Yes. And that one I got spoiled. I was like, there's no fucking way, they're lying. That was a lie.
Oh man,
that one was the lie. And then so I really believed that it didn't happen, but then when it happened, I cried. I really did cry in that one. That was a scene that really hit.
Oh man, I'm just so sorry that you had that spoiled for you, because it's social media was a minefield, for people who hadn't seen the movie after it came out. But really, even though of course it's Peter's aunt, really throughout all 5 of these appearances, really it's been Peter Parker's single mom. She's just, it's not easy, but she just finds a way and she gets it done, and she's always there for him. And it really gives us an opportunity now to kind of go back and look at what she's been throughout, all of these different appearances in the 2 prior standalone Tom Holland films, and say, you know what, it's originally, it was kind of, they were playing it as the punchline that, Marissa Tomei, Aunt May is hot now, instead of being the kindly old lady. But no, she really did bring a lot to it, and she was definitely part of that emotional foundation of these movies. That now, Peter has to find his way. Now he doesn't have anybody, of course, even more acutely by the end of the movie. But, that was kind of it. That was the only family he really had.
So the weird thing about kind of all 3 iterations of Spider-Man is that, even though each version of Peter Parker was in high school, I think the age of the actor corresponded with the age of Aunt May, where Tobey Maguire was a little bit older and he had an elderly Aunt May, and then Andrew Garfield was a little bit younger, or definitely felt more like a college student, and his Aunt May was more of a middle-aged woman, and then Tom Holland has felt like the youngest. He
Mm.
has felt most like a genuine high school student.
Mm-hmm.
So just having a younger aunt as well just seemed to work well. I don't think that was intentional. I think it just kind of happened that way. But yeah, I don't know. That was just something I noticed.
Oh, no, totally. So very affecting. So yeah, but again, I feel like, you know, for me, Act 2 was kind of like Men in Black type thing, as they're just dealing with all these multiversal villains and tracking them down and trying to cure them and all that. Just really cool. You know, it was different. You know, it was different from one of these movies, and I think it was the first time where I really felt like this movie's going to be a departure from the more traditionalist formulas of Homecoming and Far From Home. So, alas, even that could not prepare me for what was coming up in Act 3. So, let's just jump into it, shall we? Grief-stricken, Parker flees, his guilt worsening with Jameson's continued media gaslighting. I mean, it's so funny, you know, they brought it back 1-to-1 from the Raimi films, just the unbelievable hyperbole that J. Jonah Jameson uses to describe Spider-Man, that he's this unhinged psychopath, danger to society. Like, it's, you know, especially in a world where, you know, all the events of the MCU have happened and the Avengers exist, the idea that this guy is so fixated on Spider-Man, of all people, it makes it even more funny. Like, in a world where everything else has happened, the whole MCU has happened, and you're fixated on Spider-Man, you know, it just makes his obsession with hating that character even funnier, in my opinion. So, growing worrisome after Parker's silence, MJ prepares to activate the Machina, but Ned manages to open a portal with the sling ring by accident. So Ned has magic now, you guys.
I love that he has magic. Okay, so as we know, Ned is Filipino, and in my family at least, I don't know if this is traditional for every Filipino family, but in my family, we have a little bit of like, I guess not psychic, but like just a little bit of like not like magic, not like I'm opening portals, but like my grandma, she was able to like low-key like lay a curse on people. And my aunt can sense people, like sense like spirits in the room. So I guess, and it's a very more spiritual. And then the scene, I think Ned was saying like, I feel tingling in my fingers sometimes. Like sometimes I feel like my hands can like tingle. I read tarot cards, and I also, you know, have a little bit more spiritual side to me. So I think it's really funny that whole scene that he like randomly opens a portal, because he like alluded to, he's like, yeah, my hands like tingle sometimes. I don't understand. And he's like, my grandma says that sometimes this happens in the family. So I think it was really nice.
Yeah, really cool moment. Never would have expected it, you know, of everybody, that Ned is going to have magical abilities. But yeah, no, it's a cool reveal, and it's even cooler what the reveal then allows to happen next. Because, okay, so attempting to find Parker, they see what seems to be their Spider-Man on the other side of the portal. They call him over. However, they soon realize that this Spider-Man is not theirs, but rather one from another universe that previously fought the Lizard and Electro. So, Ned opens up a portal. He asks to show them where Peter Parker is. And as instructed, the portal shows them where Peter Parker is. But of course, when he comes into the portal, we realize that this is not our Peter Parker. No, this is Andrew Garfield Peter Parker. Now, this is the next big audible cheers and applause moment in the theater.
I screamed.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I really would struggle to tell you the last time I heard so many audible noises from the audience in a movie. Like, maybe, like, not
Endgame.
even Infinity War, but even then.
Like, when Cap picks up the hammer in Endgame, I remember a lot of people cheering at that.
Yeah, maybe my showing just had a lot of repeat viewers, because, I mean, like, there was some noise, but, like, it wasn't, like, a big reaction. This was a big reaction. And keep in mind, the movie had already been out for 5 days, so I can only imagine what it would have been like on opening night or Saturday or Sunday. Like, it was a big reaction in the audience. Hell, I mean, a few minutes later, when the next reveal happens, I was clapping. You can't help yourself. It's just so exciting. So it's Andrew Garfield, and of course, in this moment, you realize, yes, all the rumors were true. The alternate Spider-Men are coming back. It's all happening. It's all coming together. Dreams are coming true. So Ned tries again to find Peter Parker, thinking, okay, that was kind of a crazy fluke, but there's no way that we're going to get punked like this again. So I'm going to open up another portal. Please show us where Peter Parker, Spider-Man is. And this time, they produce a Peter Parker who had previously fought the Goblin, Octavius, and Sandman. Of course, meaning Tobey Maguire came back. This is the one where I was clapping. The whole theater was just beside themselves. Wow. I mean, what a moment. What else can you say? I mean, this is what I was talking about in the non-spoiler section where I said, as a Spider-Man fan, it never even occurred to me to wish for this to happen in live action because I just never thought it would. It wouldn't happen. And here it is happening. It was just such a special moment to see, the two of them back, and then, of course, soon to be reunited with Tom Holland and all of their respective villains. It was just, it was, especially coming off of what we just had with Aunt May. I mean, emotions are already high. And then to add this, it's just moving to the extreme. So... and of course, they're having this whole exchange in Ned's house. MJ wants Andrew Garfield to prove that he actually has spider abilities, so he's hanging off the ceiling, is crawling around the ceiling.
Is chucking bread at him?
Yeah, for some reason, Ned's grandmother is very she's down with Tobey Maguire. She's not down with Andrew Garfield. Maybe probably because Tobey Maguire is dressed like, of course, the youth pastor Spider-Man, as is later joked about. It
was actually really funny because while that scene was happening, Jess was like in real time translating everything the grandma said.
Oh, there you go.
Because, well, it was so nice to see. We never really see stuff. I'm Filipino, so I never really see stuff like that. And I love Ned. I've always loved Ned because I was like, when I first watched Homecoming, I was like, this dude has to be Filipino. Like, there's no way. So I Googled it and he ended up being Filipino, which is awesome. And I was like, yeah, I have a really main character in a movie that is all the same ethnicity or nationality or whatever ethnicity as me. And it's been wonderful to see him on the big screen. And that whole scene where he's where Lola, which means grandma in Filipino or Tagalog, is telling Andrew Garfield, while you're there, might as well get that spider web in the corner. And then she yells at all of them. She loosely translates. She's like, "You come into my house and now you're gonna mess it all up. I just told you to clean up and now you're gonna mess everything up again." And then Ned's like, "Yeah, my grandma told you to guys stop." It's very funny.
I'm gonna go to bed.
Translating. She's very cute. I love that scene. It was a very heartwarming scene. After that whole Aunt May died, you feel defeated. You're on the floor. And I saw Ned's Lola. It was nice. It was so good. I loved it. It was I think that is my favorite scene of the whole movie.
Absolutely. That's got to be special when you can really relate to what you're seeing in the movie on that level. I'd love to see a Jamaican character in one of these MCU movies one of these days. Maybe Black Panther 2 will get to explore more of the diaspora. Really cool scene. Just as reveals go, even though of course it had been widely speculated for many months now, you're seeing it and it still doesn't feel real. So really, really cool scene. Just watching Tobey and Andrew go back and forth and commiserate. But of course, now they have to go find our Peter, Tom Holland. So let's see here. The group finally managed to find their Parker alone on top of Midtown High, and attempt to console him about May, but he is too distraught about his mistakes to even care. Before he can use the Machina to send the alternate Spider-Man home, they begin sharing their own personal experiences of loss and bitterness to help him cope and realize that he is not alone. Of course, both of these Spider-Men have been through the ringer themselves and have both experienced just huge, huge personal losses, so they kind of counsel him and console him on how to manage his grief while also finishing the job at hand. And that was also a really tender moment. So, Peter Parker, now revived, decides to do what he planned to do, heal all the villains. So, the Parkers, all of them, Jones and Leeds, then retreat to the classroom laboratory within Midtown High to create an individualized cure for all of the villains. Osborn's Parker, Tobey Maguire, engineers an anti-serum for the Goblin, and Dylan's Parker, Andrew Garfield, recreates the Lizard's antidote to return him back to normal, while Parker repairs the cures for Marco and Dylan. I realize all of these Parkers can get a little confusing, which they even joke about in the scene. Afterwards, also it was just funny, as the Parkers are all getting to know themselves, I guess. They're kind of incredulous at Tobey Maguire for the fact that his webs are just an organic part of his body and not a result of web shooters, which is funny because we always speculated if these three ever did meet, they probably would give him shit for that because that is weird. Yeah. Also, they give him shit for the youth pastor, sweater vest outlook. Just
the constant banter between the three of them was the perfect.
And
fan
they
service.
did the meme. They did the Spider-Man pointing thing.
They did several memes.
A lot of fan service when they three of them met, and I knew that if they did really bring them back, there would be that allude to the whole memes and everything, like them pointing. They did it multiple times too, the whole pointing thing.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was really funny. I knew that it made me laugh, so I liked seeing it. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was really cool. And so afterwards, Ned brings them all into the Statue of Liberty, which is now being remodeled to also have a Captain America type shield, via a portal, as he and Jones remain in the lab, with the former cheering them up for the upcoming battle ahead of them. So, showdown time. Parker calls into the Daily Bugle to broadcast a message, using the Machina as a lure while announcing his presence to the Lizard, Dylan, and Marco. They arrive and attack the three Spider-Men on the scaffolding. The web slingers are unable to coordinate effectively, which leads them to be easily overpowered by their enemies. I believe the way it went was Andrew Garfield took on the Lizard, Tom Holland took on Sandman, and then Tobey took on Electro. I think that was how that went.
Yeah.
And so, grouping up, Parker assumes command of the trio due to his experience as part of the Avengers. The three adopt code names: Parker as Peter 1, the Parker from Osborn's universe as Peter 2, and the Parker from Dylan's universe as Peter 3. They decide to engage and cure one enemy at a time, with Marco first. After restraining the Lizard, Peter 3 retrieves Marco's cure and passes the device to Parker, Tom Holland, who then delivers the cure to Peter 2, allowing Marco to be neutralized. The three Spider-Men attempt to take the arc reactor from Dylan, but he proves to be too much of a match for them due to his increased power from the energy source. The Lizard breaks free and attacks Jones and Leeds in the lab, forcing Parker to leave and fight him. What the
Instead
hell?
of Parker, let's just say Tom Holland's, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
That's probably the least confusing.
So forcing Tom Holland to leave and fight him. With the help of Leeds and his sling ring, Tom Holland forces the Lizard to break open a bottle containing the antidote, which reverts him back into his human form, Kurt Connors. Leeds accidentally summons Strange to the battlefield, who, upon seeing Connors, realizes Parker's pacifist plan is working. Parker's pacifist plan. There's a good alliteration there. Strange grabs back the Machina and his sling ring from Leeds. So Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are overpowered by Dylan until Octavius arrives to extract the arc reactor himself and render him powerless with the finished neutralizer. Andrew Garfield reconciles with Dylan, while Tobey Maguire warmly reunites with Octavius. There we go. In the synopsis, it just says Parker 2 and Parker 3, so I have to try to remember who's who. Parker, Tom Holland. There we go. Tom Holland returns Strange as he prepares to use the machina to send everyone home. The Goblin then shows up, ambushes the group, and takes the machina, but Octavius and Strange grab it back. Unbeknownst to them, the Goblin had stuck a pumpkin bomb inside the object. It detonates, releasing the unstable contained spell, breaking the fabric of the earthly plane and opening it up to the multiverse. The blast also causes MJ to fall from the Statue of Liberty. Parker, Tom Holland, dives to rescue her, but is knocked aside by the Goblin, leaving Andrew Garfield in the position to redeem, of course, the famous/infamous Gwen Stacy fall from Amazing Spider-Man 2. This time, he focuses more on the diving than the web slinging, and he is able to catch her and rescue her. And that was, yet again, another audible cheering applause moment. It was a real moment of catharsis for that character after Amazing Spider-Man 2, which, of course, at the very least, they were planning for the Amazing Spider-Man to be a trilogy. That never panned out. But because that movie ends where it did, it really left Andrew Garfield's take on Spider-Man in a very dark place. He pretty much just stands by Gwen Stacy's grave for months, mourning her and just imagining what he could have done differently. And they even allude to it in this movie when he first shows up. Hey, I lost somebody very close to me, and I went down kind of a dark path after that. And so, it was a very welcome and long-awaited moment of catharsis for Andrew Garfield and his Spider-Man. It just goes to show you that, clearly he's been thinking about what he could have done differently in that moment every day since. And now he finally had a chance to put it into practice. So that was a really cool moment.
Oh my God, it makes me cry. When I saw that, I cried again. And it's so nice to see, I have to think of another word to use besides nice, but it was lovely to see him finally having the moment to save MJ or his, he obviously envisioned it would be Gwen Stacy, but
yeah,
he really had his full moment. He had his chance to save.
Yeah.
He had his closure with that whole moment. Obviously, when Gwen died, he felt like he could have done more, and he felt like he could never forgive himself for that. But now that he saved MJ, he can forgive himself, and it's so multi-layered. Yeah. I cried, and I'm crying about it now because it's just, I love Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, because I just think he's cute. So sorry, Reid.
Reid, you do look a little bit like Andrew Garfield, honestly.
Don't tell him that. Now he's gonna
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jess. I'm sure I just made your life that much harder. To your point, I'm not really a big crier when it comes to movies, but that was, I think, the closest I came to shedding a tear in this movie was when Andrew Garfield caught MJ. That really was, because it's been 7 years in the making, that moment, and just that catharsis. It's finally exhaling after holding your breath for a really long time, because we saw it in the trailer. We knew that this moment was coming, but whereas it would have just been cool if Tom Holland caught her, it really means something that Andrew Garfield did it. So I'm so glad it worked out that way. To your point, a very, very cool scene and a very, very cool moment. As dawn breaks, Parker confronts the Goblin alone. Ravaged with vengeance. Oh, that's a colorful turn of phrase. Ravaged with vengeance. He viciously beats him down and attempts to finish him off with his glider, but he is stopped by Peter 2, Tobey Maguire. This, however, leaves him open to get stabbed in the back by the Goblin. So, the epic final confrontation, the final battle between Tom Holland, enraged at the Goblin for killing May, and he nearly does it. He is ready to straight up murder the Goblin until he's stopped by Tobey Maguire. Andrew Garfield provides Tom Holland with the anti-serum, allowing him to cure Osborn from the Goblin. He notices Tobey Maguire's injury, which was non-fatal, and realizes the extent of the damage he had caused. Strange struggles to hold the rifts in the earthly plane together, in which intruders are already preparing to invade this reality. However, Parker has him enact a new spell to make everyone forget who he is to fix it. Parker embraces his alternate selves, who encourage him to continue on as Spider-Man. Strange repairs the rifts with the new spell and successfully transports Peter 2, Tobey Maguire, Peter 3, Andrew Garfield, Dylan, Octavius, Osborn, Marco, and Connors, all back to their origin universes, along with, as we'll see in the mid-credit scene, Eddie Brock, who unknowingly leaves behind a small remnant of the Venom symbiote in his place. Parker embraces Leeds and Jones for a final time, who make him promise to return someday to help them remember him. He then departs as Strange unleashes the spell, leaving the entire world completely oblivious to Parker's existence. A few weeks later, it is now the holidays. Parker tries to reconnect with his MIT-bound friends, but after being reminded of Jones' wounds, he decides not to. He visits May's grave to pay his respects and is joined by Hogan, who is also now a stranger to him. Vowing to carry on, Parker moves into a new apartment alone and begins studying to earn his GED. Alerted to criminal activity on his phone, he stitches together a simpler suit and resumes his heroics undisturbed as Spider-Man, honoring May's mantra of community service and responsibility. So.
Fuck.
So sad. I just really wanted him to be like, I like your necklace. And she would have like, oh, this. And then she would have remembered. I also thought, for a hot minute, there was when Ned and MJ, like in that scene in the cafe or in the bakery, I thought they were fucking dating by the end because they looked so happy to see each other. And I was like, oh no, like this dude fucking, like he's, oh my God, they're dating. And it was just really sad because like he wanted to like, you know, congratulate them and like be friends, but he couldn't. He saw that like, you know, their lives were better without them in it. But I hope that he comes back. Also, I know off topic, but I think Ned's gonna turn out to be evil.
Really? Oh.
Jess is a subscriber to the Ned Leeds becomes the Hobgoblin theory.
Yep.
Oh, that would be fascinating.
Hobgoblin with magic.
He said, I will never turn on you, like ever, like I'm your best friend. But he forgot about Peter. He forgot that he said that. So
that's true.
He could turn. That's
a fascinating theory, and honestly, I hadn't thought about it that way. But yeah, no, now that since the two don't have any connection anymore, and he does have magic. I mean, it's not impossible. So yeah, I think that's a really fascinating theory.
Yeah, and he forgets that he has magic, you know, because he forgot that he did the whole portal and everything.
Oh yeah, there you go. So absolutely.
And his jacket was the yellow and blue, like Hobgoblin colors.
Oh yeah.
The movie.
And so, yeah, so Reid, now this is your turn to put on your smug face, because this is one that you actually got correct. In our second trailer reaction, we were speculating as to what the purple rifts in the sky meant. And I said the trailer is cut together in a way where it's inferring that it's the other Spider-Men who are coming through the rifts in that moment. But no, you said it is not them. It's going to be someone or something else. And that is true. They was someone or something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, many someones or something else's.
Okay, well, it depends what like previous episode you want to go off of, because I think in the teaser reaction, we saw that, and I thought that Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was going to pick up the exact second that this movie ended, just like this movie picked up the exact second that Far From Home ended. That is obviously not the case, as far as we know, but in terms of like the purple rings in the sky, that ended up being resolved. So
and I think that for the rifts in the sky, I think that the casual moviegoer probably would be a little confused as to what exactly that represented. It seems to me that they represented all of the figures from all of the alternate Spider-Mens, you know, across the multiverses, you know, just infinitely coming into this universe.
Yeah.
You know, every Spider-Man affiliated character, every Spider-Man villain, everybody is about to come in. And yeah, I mean, I've seen some videos speculating on what some of the outlines could have represented. Maybe there was a little bit inference of maybe Kraven the Hunter, maybe Black Cat.
Rhino.
Yeah, Rhino. Yeah, Rhino was one of them.
Scorpion.
Yeah, Scorpion. No. So, but I think that definitely, if we're going off of your more recent prediction, which is generally our rule, we'll go off the more recent of the two predictions. Yeah, you were right. It was something else. You know, of course, the Spider-Man had already been in the movie for a while at that point.
And by something else, we kind of mean nothing ended up coming through in the end.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah, it would have been interesting, and maybe a couple of smaller characters might have just popped up here and there, only to get sent back immediately. But yeah, we just got the outlines of them. They're like getting closer. They're approaching the rift, but we only get like a silhouette of them.
Do you think that's where the future Spider-Man villains will originate from? Was that they, did leak through that? Probably not, but
yeah, because I mean, yeah, it seems like it was pretty self-correcting. Once the rifts closed, everybody went back. So probably not, but some of the villains that they hinted at in the rift will probably pop up in the next trilogy. Like I'm pretty sure we're going to get a Kraven at some point in the near future.
We have never gotten a movie adaptation of Kraven the Hunter.
Yeah, I'm really hoping. I know this is a fan casting, but I think Henry Cavill would be a great Kraven. I think that he would just he's got the build and he's got the voice to be a really cool Kraven the Hunter.
Is this Henry Cavill with the mustache?
Actually, either way works. I think actually better. It's better with facial hair. Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
I feel like a goatee or like a full.
Yeah. So totally. I think that would work well.
I like it either way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So everyone has forgotten Peter Parker. He is back to being a nobody, and this is this is. I really agree with the takes that are saying that. This is the first time that Tom Holland Peter has really felt like the Peter Parker that we knew from previous films. Because, up until this movie, really, it's always been Peter has been Avengers adjacent. This version of Spider-Man is so enthralled in being part of the MCU. He's as closely integrated as possible that, I have some sympathy for the people who complain that in Homecoming and Far From Home, he felt too much like Tony Stark's protege to be his own character and be his own man. But in this, it's back to being classic Peter Parker. He's a nobody. He's poor. Nobody knows who he is. He's just figuring out on his own. And yeah, it's the classic conundrum, just dealing with all of the problems of being a regular person out in the world, a college student, just figuring it out. And being Spider-Man and having all these awesome abilities. That's really what I mean when I say that really, instead of being a trilogy with no origin story, this whole trilogy was the origin story for this version of Peter Parker as Spider-Man. And I just thought it was a brilliant way to cap off these three films.
Yeah, definitely a soft reboot of sorts.
Absolutely. Also, he has a new suit. It's a little bit, the blue is a little bit more shiny, I guess, for lack of a better word. So also, it's just a kind of a brighter blue. But I like how it's a simpler suit, because again, I think the Iron Spider is so evocative of the Avengers era of Spider-Man that, he's got to kind of be his own thing again. So
I do hope he keeps the mechanical eyes. Because I thought that was a really nice touch. I loved the expressiveness that brought to the costume. But yeah,
and just it was very moving because he's got the thing in his hand. He so desperately wants to try to tell Ned and MJ what their relationship was, but he can't bring himself to do it because he doesn't want to be the reason his friends get hurt again. And yeah, I mean, it was just, this movie, it's, and this is what we mean when we say that this movie captures the emotional depth of Spider-Man in a way that I think really we haven't seen almost since the Raimi films, honestly. Like, it's tough and it's gut-wrenching. he has got nobody and nothing in this world, and he just has to figure it out from scratch. And yeah, that includes having to say goodbye to his friends. It goes to show you, once again, as with all of these movies, the whole time it had the title had a double meaning. No Way Home, we thought it was just because he was going to get hounded by the press and everybody and all the villains from the trailers, but No Way Home really means that by the end of this movie he has nowhere to go. Like that's it. He has to start his life from scratch, so he has no way home.
I have a question. How the fuck did he get an apartment? This man has like no ID, no birth certificate, no money. How did he like pay for a security deposit? It's a shitty apartment, but like he has no identification.
I mean, maybe he was able to like go back to the to go back to his and May's old apartment. Maybe she had some stuff stashed away in case of emergencies. Which, I mean, I could actually honestly see her doing, like being so protective and planning 5 steps ahead if anything happens, because she's known that Peter has been Spider-Man since the end of Homecoming, so she's probably been planning ahead. If we ever have to leave in a hurry for whatever reason, I'll have like a go bag packed so that we can just we can get out of here. Or maybe Happy Hogan's place, since they kind of moved some of their stuff over there. So yeah, that if I had to guess, that's probably how. But yeah, that's the end of the runtime. You still have the mid and post credit scenes, but any final thoughts?
It was really good. I love the movie. It made me feel a lot of emotions throughout the whole thing, and I never expected like to see the past Spider-Mans ever in conjunction with Tom Holland. I always knew that people joked about that it was rumored to happen. But when it finally did happen, it was like, oh, this feels good. This feels right. And they did it in such a tasteful way. I thought that maybe like if they ever did bring back the original Spider-Mans, it would be like a small cameo or like this movie of the other Spider-Mans, and never like a whole like they were meant to build a storyline. And I think it was great. I think it was well done. It was very ambitious and it was very well executed.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I mean, it was already so much of a treat to get all the old villains back, but to have the prior to live action Spider-Man, it just, I know I'm repeating myself, but I never thought I'd get to see it on the big screen, and I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad that this movie happened, it existed. I feel like it really was the result of just everything working out, right place, right time. And yeah, John Watts, he's done a bang up job with these movies. Like he was, and this is pretty typical of Marvel, they'll bring in mostly, they won't really bring in big name directors. Like, you'll have the odd, James Gunn say, but mostly it's people who've done very small stuff previously. John Watts is probably one of the lowest profile people that they've brought on. Like he did I think he did like a thriller film before this. He did like some very small movies, but starting with Homecoming, then Far From Home, and then this. I mean, this is a guy who you could tell really cares about Spider-Man. He loves the character, loves the property, loves the world. He's done a great job building it out over these 3 movies. And yeah, as you already heard my score. 10 out of 10, badass seal of approval, movie of the year. Like I'm just showering words on it at this point. Phenomenal. It is. In fact, I would even go so far as to say the best live action Spider-Man film, certainly. Because I don't even want to pit this against Into the Spider-Verse, because that's just not even fair. Yeah. But the best live action Spider-Man film I think we've ever gotten. So
well, here's the kind of golden question: is who is the best live action Spider-Man?
Yeah, that's a debate.
That's the tricky one.
Yeah, that's really tough because all of them have their virtues and all of them have their complications, and so that's really tough. And honestly, I'm even I've even been thinking about it because in the weeks leading up to this, I've been going back and rewatching all of the previous films, and there are elements I really Yeah, I mean, they all have their pros and cons. It's tough to say. You know, if you want a more, like, I guess, a more, I don't know, you know, because Tom Holland, he's got, you know, he most embodies like a high schooler. He's quippy. He's part of the Avengers. He's got that whole thing. Then you've got Tom Holland. I think Andrew Garfield, he's a little more, probably more accurate to how like high schoolers and like early college students actually are, in that he's sarcastic, and he's conflicted, and he, you know, but he has fun with it, you know, and he's really just trying to find his way in the world. And then Toby, I don't want to say he's the most grown-up Spider-Man just because he's the oldest, because I mean those movies, of course, the Raimi films do have their kind of over-the-top comic bookiness.
Yeah.
But he does bring an emotional depth and a maturity to it, you know. Yeah, I mean they're all different. I think it's almost impossible to say. But do you have a favorite?
I have to say, Tom Holland is by far my favorite, just because I feel like he carries a very young energy to the role that you don't really see with Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield. I feel like he's the best at portraying that kind of childlike, not even innocence, but like, you know, he gets into situations where he needs help and he wants help, but he has to like figure it out on his own, and he struggles. And you know, I think he does a really good job of bringing out the nerdy side. Like, kind of a constant with these movies is like this big Lego Death Star that he's constantly building, and like that's just like a really nerdy thing that yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of debate. A lot of people have said like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is the best because it had like these really good swinging sequences, and like he was the best Spider-Man, but not a good Peter Parker. But I mean, after this third film, I just have to say, all my chips in Tom Holland.
I agree, kinda. I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I think he's wonderful. I think he really portrays that, because I correct me if I'm wrong, but in the comics, is he a teenager in the comics or no?
Yeah,
He starts out as a high schooler, I thought.
Yeah, a high schooler, and he goes on to be a college student. Yeah.
Right. So when I'm watching the ones with Andrew Garfield, it felt like he was too cool to be Spider-Man. Like he looked too cool.
It felt like he was already in college.
Yeah, he was cute. So like, you know, sorry, Reid. I had to say it again.
Fine. He is cute. I would.
You would?
I would kiss Andrew Garfield. Yeah.
I would. But when watching Tobey Maguire, he's a little bit more older. You feel like he's a little bit of an older.
Yeah, he definitely has the cool factor, which it's like cognitive dissonance, because you're supposed to believe this is like some sort of unliked, unpopular nerd, but he's like the most charismatic of anybody in his school in those movies. So.
And so when watching that scene in the lab, when they were trying to figure out the cures for all the villains, Andrew Garfield find a cure felt very odd to me. It just felt odd watching him do it because he looked too cool to be in a science lab. But I think Tom Holland really encapsulates that. I'm young, I'm a teen, and like I'm young, and I'm also a nerd. So it's a nice balance of both looking cool but also being a little bit nerdy. I think Andrew Garfield's a little bit too cool for the franchise.
That's you bring up the lab scene, which made me realize too that I think Tom Holland is the most convincing of Peter Parker is super fucking smart. For a high school student, and like he's great at math and science, and I think part of that is just because it's, you know, shown more in his movies. Like Andrew Garfield's, he, you know, there's the whole building the web shooter scene, and like in the second one he's like trying to make his webs like electrically resistant, but there isn't much of like the chemistry side. We don't see him like talking about the math or just and then Tobey Maguire, I don't remember anything that was like him in a lab doing science stuff. It was just all photography.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was interested in science because, of course, he had those encounters with Norman Osborn, and then, of course, in Spider-Man 2, he was writing a paper on Otto Octavius, so he was interested in it, but we never really saw him do it because
he wasn't like straight up a scientist.
Yeah, because he never really had to because, of course, unlike the other two, he never had to build his own web shooter. So
yeah.
But yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. He definitely sells it the most in terms of being someone who was capable of designing all these things, just being a really smart, gifted, young kid. So, yeah, that was Spider-Man: No Way Home. Let's talk a little bit about the mid and post-credit scenes. So, in the mid-credit scene, once again, I have to give you credit, Reid, because we both said it, but you said it first. It's gonna be Venom. Venom is gonna be the cameo that we get. Of course, picks up pretty much. We've had a little mini storyline running this whole time from the Venom post-credit scene to this mid-credit scene. Venom, Tom Hardy gets zapped into the MCU. They're still hanging out at this beach resort, and it's just Venom learning from the bartender just all the events pretty much of the MCU, learning about the Avengers. Oh, there's this guy in a metal suit who can fly and a big green dude, and there was a purple alien who showed up and snapped half of the universe out of existence. But just as soon as he finishes getting this explanation, a golden light appears and he's gone again. And you realize, oh shit, he just went away like all the other villains, and so you just brought Tom Hardy here to send him back again. I actually wanted him to stay. I don't want you to send him back. I know we were all rolling our eyes when he got zapped into the MCU in the Venom 2 post-credit scene. But now that he's here, at least let him stay. I don't want him to go back.
I ranted about this to Jess for a full 45 minutes, and she kept trying to change the conversation or interject other things to talk about, and I was like, I could not let this go because it bothered me so much. I'm gonna let you say your thing now so that I'm not interrupted later when I give my whole spiel again.
About Venom?
Yes. And Sony.
Yes, we had a whole conversation in the car about this. I never really understood Venom. Never was the first movie, second one, it wasn't really my thing.
Yeah.
I also thought Venom was a part of the Spider-Man franchise because I'm stupid and I just didn't know that they were separate.
That's the thing. He is.
Oh, he is?
Just not part of the MCU.
See, look what he's doing. He's really interrupting me again. He's interrupting me again.
Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, okay. We'll see. So then I was telling Reid, I was like, maybe it was a contractual thing for Sony to bring Venom into the Spider-Man universe and Marvel MCU. Remember that whole issue? I think we were in high school where they were having contractual issues between.
Yeah, that was back in 2019. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm thinking because they always plan these movies way far ahead. Right?
Oh yeah.
Maybe that was a contractual thing to bring Venom into this thing because they really wanted Venom to lift off.
Oh yeah.
And be this another kind of Spider-Man rival-ish kind of thing with the Marvel movies. I feel that maybe Sony was like, you need to put in the suit here because we're losing money out here, losing money, and Reid was like, no, they can't. So now you can speak, Reid.
Sony fucked up so bad when I saw that mid-credits scene. I was just like, what the fuck? Because, I talked about this at the end of the Venom reaction, or not reaction, but the Venom episode we did. Sony had this great opportunity to move all of their property into MCU adjacent stuff. So all their stuff gets zapped into, and it's on the fringes of the MCU. It can reference stuff in the main MCU, but the MCU won't reference stuff outwards to the Sony property. So you have Morbius, who is in contact with Michael Keaton Vulture, who is in the MCU. That connection then makes sense. you have Venom like now in the MCU. He can fight Spider-Man finally. That would be great.
Yeah, like how he recognizes Spider-Man in the Let There Be Carnage post-credit scene.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, this will be good. And he gets brought into the MCU. I'm like, okay, they're gonna set this whole thing up. It'll just make the whole difference between like Marvel MCU and Sonyverse a lot easier to understand because they'll be connected.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tom Hardy just like disappears again. And it's just like, what the fuck? Why even bring him in the first place? Like, what? Just so you can have a little black goo? There's 1,000,001 different ways that black goo can show up. Have it come from space again. Don't have it come from the same fucking.
It's mad.
And I was like, it just didn't make any sense to me, that decision making. So now they're disconnected again. It's still a separate Sonyverse. But they still don't have access to Spider-Man because he's still part of the MCU, and it's not like they can bring him over into the Sonyverse. I didn't understand it. I felt like it was really dumb. I feel like now they're kind of screwed again because they're stuck with this Sonyverse and no Spider-Man. There was talks about maybe reviving Andrew Garfield because a lot of people were like, "Oh, I miss Andrew Garfield" after seeing this one, but I don't think they could have planned for that. Maybe they were banking on it, but I
don't really know that.
Sony, what are you doing? What the fuck?
And honestly, I'm sure that Sony could back a Brinks truck of money up to Andrew Garfield's house, and he would consider it. But just in terms of creatively, I'm not really detecting that big of an appetite for Andrew Garfield to come back. No. He's like he talked about after Amazing Spider-Man 2, taking a step back from blockbuster movies and being Spider-Man gave him a chance to kind of redefine his career. Now he's doing more big movies again. He just had the that musical on Netflix.
Yes.
Yeah, I forget what it's called.
I don't know the name of it.
Yeah, but it's yes. Jonathan Larson, the guy who wrote Rent. And he's doing more stuff like that. He was also in The Eyes of Tammy Faye, which is about the televangelist Jim Baker.
Yeah, I want to see that one. I saw the trailer for that. He looks really good.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know that he's really that desperate to be Spider-Man again. I don't
think so. It's more like, what does Sony need?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
But I you pretty much echoing my sentiments exactly, and I'm echoing your sentiments exactly. It seemed like coming out of Venom Let There Be Carnage, it was like, okay, the first Venom was not great. The second Venom was better, but still not great. But hey, at least he can now have a new life in the MCU.
Yeah, he was on the run. He goes to the MCU. No one knows where he is. He's no longer on the run.
Yeah,
he chooses to stay there.
And it would be really cool to have an encounter between Tom Hardy and Tom Holland, the two Toms, the two British Toms. That would be really neat. And they even set it up. He recognizes him in the Let There Be Carnage post-credit scene, but no, he just zapped in for a joke and zapped back out again. And now he's back
also
in
for a joke.
the Sonyverse, which I'm sorry, Sony, but the Sonyverse is doomed. The Sonyverse is going to end up like the Universal Monsterverse that they were trying to set up with The Mummy back like 5 years ago. Like it's going to go the same way. It's just sorry, it's not going to work out. Their best hope was to, as you said, Reid, make it MCU adjacent, but can't do that now.
They fucked it up. They set it up perfectly, and then they fucked it up.
Yeah,
and it's just like, what are you doing?
Back to square one. Because a Venom 3 in the MCU, I'll watch that. A Venom 3 just as a pure sequel to the first two films, I don't care. I don't care. I mean, especially considering you've already used Carnage, so who gives a fuck? So they fucked it up. It was kind of a letdown as the mid-credit scene goes. But there's still one more thing, the post-credit scene, which was, as we alluded to, literally just a trailer for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, but it was really cool. So
it was really cool.
Yeah.
I love Wanda. I think she is. I always flip between who's my favorite, but her and Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, I think they are my favorite Avengers. I love Wanda. I tell Reid all the time, she's so pretty. She's so nice. Like, she's so cool.
And then I agree with her, and she gets mad at me. Like, what's up with that?
I didn't say anything about that. You're the worst, bro. Anyways, in this,
I second the motion.
in the post-credit scene, they even alluded to WandaVision. Like, I didn't think that they would ever like be like, oh yeah, I know what you did. I forgot the name of the town. But
Westview. Yeah.
Westview. There it was. Because we have a Westwood up in Jersey.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I thought I was gonna say Westwood, but I didn't. It's Westview.
Close enough.
Close enough. But they alluded to that, and I thought that Marvel really wanted to contain the TV things that they've been doing and the movies they've been doing separate. But now that they alluded to it, it was really nice. She was in her like after the WandaVision, she had her costume on.
Yeah,
and you can see her do her magic, and her hands are turning black. So.
Yeah, it just goes to show you that she's now that she's been studying the Darkhold, she's kind of getting more in touch with the dark magic side of things after taking over Agatha Harkness's powers. So
yeah,
I think that, I mean, we didn't see anything in this trailer that would suggest that the Scarlet Witch is going to be the ultimate villain of the movie, but I think the potential is absolutely still there. I think that, you know, she is on a quest to find a reality where her children from WandaVision are still alive. And that's going to cause her to just be pretty much just ripping through these multiverses, trying to find that reality where she can be with her kids again. On top of that, there's going to be all sorts of multiversal monsters. We saw like a one-eyed tentacle dude that is that the one who throws the bus at him and he has to like saw through it? Yeah.
Yes. He, like pulls a Cersei, and we hope there was no one in that bus.
Yeah. And also we know, so one of the biggest takeaway from the trailer is there's going to be at least 2 variant Doctor Stranges in this movie. One of them is called Defiant Strange. I think that's the one that we saw in the trailer, who's the one that has the darker look about him, and he says that things got out of hand. And then the other one is Strange Supreme. Now, is that going to be the same Strange Supreme from What If? Don't know yet.
Wait, is this confirmed that we're going to see 2 alternate?
Yeah, this is confirmed. We're going to get at least 2 variant Doctor Stranges. One is Defiant Strange. The other one is Strange Supreme. Possibly the same Strange Supreme from What If. So, yeah, you know.
I mean, I was surprised by the What If connections. I mean, in you know, No Way Home, like he contains the spell in that like crystalline geometric ball, just like in What If. And then in this trailer we see the buildings like turning melting into black goo. Yeah. And that was also straight out of What If.
Absolutely.
You know, I thought What If was going to be a one-off is not the right term, but like just more for fun, but not like strictly MCU canon.
Yeah, kind of like a
but
offshoot.
It looks like it's MCU canon.
Yeah, it's looking like it. It is looking like it. And also, we got a few brief glimpses of, this is pretty much just our observation reactions for the Doctor Strange 2 trailer, of America Chavez, who is from a different universe herself, and who can kind of kick star-shaped portals into different universes. So she's kind of a multiversal traveler herself. So she's gonna be cool.
I'm not familiar with her character at all. I've never heard of her.
Yeah, I really have only heard of her in the context of coming up in this movie, but she sounds cool. I mean, a character who can kick a star-shaped portal into a different dimension, that's pretty neat. So, you know, and a natural ally for Doctor Strange in a story like this. So, I mean, it looks like they're going to be visiting all sorts of weird realms. There was one realm where they were like coming through like the porthole of a ship. And they were in this weird, like, void
like
region.
A steampunked steel door that opens up on, like, a flat brick wall floating in space.
Yeah. Also, Mordo has dreads now, so he's been busy. I guess that explains where he was during the events of Infinity War and Endgame, because I know that those dreads, they take a long time. There's a lot of maintenance that goes into dreads, so he was just busy doing that.
I actually never thought we would see him again.
Yeah,
I thought they had abandoned that plot line, that post-credit scene, but
she would tell Ejiofor, we got to bring him back at least one more time. So
I don't think he's going to be the main villain though.
Oh, also, yeah, probably not. but also, Dr. Christine Palmer is getting married to an unknown person, and Doctor Strange is standing in the pews there, looking on. So that's going to be interesting. Are we going to revisit perhaps their past, and who is Christine Palmer getting married to? Is that going to be important? Maybe, but it's interesting. Also, the Sanctum is flooded now, so I guess someone left a portal open again. So yeah, a lot to look forward to. Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. I can't wait to see what Raimi-isms he's going to introduce into this, because Raimi's style is so distinctive. It's a lot more distinctive than most MCU directors. So I'm hoping that he can be a lot like Chloe Zhao in Eternals and bring a lot of his visual, style and his visual
mannerisms,
language, to the movie. So that's my hope. But looked really cool.
I'm just excited to have a Marvel movie with a darker tone.
Yeah.
Right. I was just gonna say, when it clips to, sorry, I'm like all over the place right now. But when it clips to that, I don't even know what was happening, because I watched it and I low-key was confused, but I enjoyed it either way. It just flips to a dark Doctor Strange, and it felt very the tone shift a lot, shifted towards a darker movie, and I was like, that's really exciting, because we're always used to I saved the world, I'm a good person, it's like that. I feel like there's got to be a juxtaposition between, am I good, am I bad, do I save the world with my ability, or do I just keep it for myself? It's more I feel there's going to be a lot of internal struggle maybe in Doctor Strange. I'm really excited about it. I love Doctor Strange. He's also very cute.
Absolutely. Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh my God, I was obsessed with him in high school. He was one of my fixations. You know, I was telling you guys before, I had that phase in my life.
Oh yeah.
Benedict Cumberbatch and Sherlock was one of my phases.
I mean, hell, I think we can all agree that Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock is one of the best things to happen to television in recent memory. So, God, what are they going to do season 4? I think we're all waiting on that. I hope he gets back to that at some point.
I don't know if they can come back from that last season.
I
don't think so.
That.
Oh, fair point. Yeah, looks really good, and I would say, at least in that moment, kind of wiped the sour taste of the mid-credit scene out of my mouth. I was like, okay, I'm back on board.
Yeah.
We're chilling. So
yeah, I was like, oh, this is such a cool look, and then I got home and then saw the trailer for Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness had released, and I clicked on it, and it was the exact same sequence, and I was just like, oh, it was just a trailer.
That works.
It wasn't even a scene.
I told Reid, I was like, I'm pretty sure this is the fucking trailer to this whole movie. And he was like, no.
When have they ever done that? It's always a scene. It's never just a trailer at the end.
No, but they released a trailer. And I don't know how I felt about it.
It has happened once before. In Captain America: The First Avenger, the end credit scene for that was just a trailer for the Avengers. So it has happened one time before.
Still though.
It was hurt.
Yeah, well, I liked it, and I liked Spider-Man: No Way Home. This was a triumph of a movie.
Yes.
And yeah, any final thoughts on this other than just, for the love of God, go out and see it?
It's just really good. I love Ned.
I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, folks, I think then that does it. I promised it was going to be 2 hours of us gushing about Spider-Man, and we are just about right on the money. So thank you all at home so much for joining us for this holiday special edition, a very special holiday edition of Observation Conversations and Observations with Friends. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you. And as always, just, fantastic insights, fantastic points. So always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I love being on here.
Absolutely. And, without giving too much away, this will actually be the final regular edition of Observations with Friends and Observation Conversations for the time being. We'll have another video coming out very soon to explain what our plans are for the future. But for 2021 at least, this will do it. And I couldn't imagine a sweeter note to end it on. So, from Reid, Jess, and myself, thank you all so much for watching, and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we will speak to you again very soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Take a look overhead. Hey there goes the Spider-Man. In the chill of night, at the scene of a crime, like a streak of light, he arrives just in time. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Wealth and fame, he's ignored. Action is his reward. To him, life is a great big hang-up. Wherever there's a hang-up, you'll find the Spider-Man.